This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
This is Christina Rasmussen, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self. Thank you guys for taking the time to hang out with me today. And if this is your first time listening, thank you. Make sure to hit subscribe and leave a rating and a review. It helps me scale the podcast. It helps me get this out to those who may need it the most. And for those who are returning to this amazing, beautiful community, make sure to share. Sharing is good. I am just so excited about today's guest, Dr. Michael Sapiro, because he is just on the same wavelength that I am. He teaches about integrating spirituality, science, and psychology together to help build modalities that are going to help you with your trauma, with your past experiences, with your future self, and just moving along this flow of life, this river that is just continuously bending and flowing, and you in the middle of that, and you're trying to figure things out. And Dr. Sapiro is putting together meditations and presentations and podcasts and Dharma talks and yoga philosophy essays to help us kind of navigate those waters. And he comes today and he talks to us about his practice, his life, his story, and how we can live in the moment and be in the moment, and where we can find that bliss and how we can achieve that. And when that bliss escapes us, like it does so often because we get so caught up in daily life and the monkey mind and work projects and life and kids and marriage and all of that gunk, we can always come back to the moment and find our true selves. Yeah, that's how powerful it is. Here's actually a technique, or here's actually, you know what? Here is what Dr. Sapiro is teaching his patients or clients.
Calming ourselves and then giving ourselves love that we desperately need. And that takes practice. That's what I teach people to do. So yes, over time, they can get unconditional love in a minute, in a second, but then they have to spend the lifetime practicing with it until it becomes second nature to go, oh shit, hold on. Trey, you're okay, man. You're just overwhelmed. It's okay. And right there, unconditional love floods you. And now you can move on and do some discernment, clarity work. What should I do now? So that's what I actually teach. It's a process of awareness, calming down, having compassion and love. And yes, everyone can have that.
Yes. Unconditional love in one moment of realization that we are deserving of that, and that we can give it to ourselves, and that we don't have to go to someone else out there outside of our bodies and find it. It is right here in this moment, and we can have it. And man, I am fired up about this interview because Mike crushes it. We go 0 to 100 in like 6 seconds. We go into everything that we're both about and that we're trying to help people realize about themselves. We're trying to help you become more aware of the greatness that is inside of you and how you can achieve that greatness, how you can remember who you are, and some of the practices, some of the methods, some of his science, some of his methods of like coming together, coming to one, coming back to the moment, coming back into this moment and realizing what it is, the eternity in the moment, and what it is that we are here to remember. Yeah, that's some good stuff. I'm excited. You can check him out for sure. Go to www.maitri michaelsapiro.com, and you can find all of his podcasts, all of his publications, presentations, even meditations. I've listened to a couple of them, and it's very powerful, very good stuff. I really appreciate that Mike has put all this stuff out there for you guys to listen to. Listen to his podcast, Radio Awakened. It's good stuff, great content. Yeah, check him out. You can also email him over there and message him and find out what you guys, if you can collaborate, or if you want to find out more about him. So yeah, check him out. Before you do though, I need you to do one thing for me. My sacred activism is children suffering. Yeah, it's what crushes my heart. It's what really gets me motivated to bring awareness to this cause. It's abandonedchildrensfund.org. I've mentioned it many, many times because it is something that I am very passionate about bringing more awareness to. And that is an organization that's going into these underdeveloped countries, and they are helping these children who are abandoned by their families receive love, receive education, receive food, clothing, and feeling like a kid again. Imagine growing up in a war-torn country, having 8 or 9 brothers or sisters, and your family is at the point where they're refugees and they can't feed you anymore, and their only solution is to take you somewhere and then pray that you will go and be taken care of, and drop you off at that doorstep and say, here, please, and we'll pray for you, and we hope that everything works out. And here's this organization here ready to receive that child and bring them in and nurture them and give them what that family could not. I could not even imagine having to make that decision and what that decision looks like. What is the thought process behind that? Because how can I, when I'm here, how can I make that decision when I am in this country with the family that I have and the people that I'm surrounded with, but I'm not, I put myself in those situations because I have been there. Maybe not on this plane, maybe not in this life, but I have been there, and I feel the pain, and I remember the pain of something similar, and I remember how much love there is in me, and that I want that for these children, and I want to bring that awareness of that love to those children by bringing awareness of this organization out to you so that you may hear it. And whether you donate or whether you share their webpage or you research something and you help someone out there, that is spreading that love. Even though you don't see it, it is spreading that love. So always spread awareness about things, because you never know where that will go, where the energy goes, where the energy flows. Yeah. And then go to traydowns.com, because I love hearing about your heartfelt journeys and where you're at and what your heart is guiding you to do. I love every bit of that, and I want to hear more about that. So go to traydowns.com, leave me a message, and if you want to, you can follow me on Instagram. Not a big deal. I'm trying to get away from social media. I shut down the Facebook. I shut down a lot of the other social outlets just because I'm just not feeling that energy anymore. The only reason why I keep Instagram is because I think the creative side of it has its benefits for me in flow states, but other than that, I am out of the social media game for sure. I think it doesn't benefit me anymore. It's more or less a distractor, and it's something that I do not want. I don't want to be addicted to anymore. So taking a stance on that. So you can follow me on Instagram though. I'm TDowns80. A little bit going on over there, but not much. But yeah, I'm excited about this conversation. It's more, I don't even know if it's a conversation. It's more like I don't know. It's more like creating something, creating this energy together with Mike and putting it out there for you guys. I'm excited. So here is my conversation with the great and powerful Dr. Michael Sapiro.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Sapiro, and this is Your Superior Self.
Mike, man, it's so good to have you on the show. Like, I'm so stoked to have you on. Like, you have no idea. I've been researching you, and I think your resume is outstanding. I'm kind of a little intimidated though. I mean, you have a strong portfolio in the psychology world, but thank you so much for joining, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Again, one of my colleagues was on the show and she said she had a lot of fun, and I think it's worth it having these conversations and also just enjoying each other's company.
Or the energy, right? Like it feels like when you're around people that are just like on the same wavelength, the conversation is just on a whole nother level.
Yeah, presence. For me, that's presence. And then kind of like what I often say is the Dharma speaking for me. So many people when I'm teaching are like, oh, you're so wise. And I'm like, dude, it's not really me. Like Mike is almost 43. He knows some stuff, but not a lot. When I'm fully present, the truth just seems to speak for itself. And I learn as much as everyone's learning. I'm often astounded by the things that are coming out. So for me, it's being present with another human being and allowing our presence to be a channel for universe or truth to speak for us.
I love that. Like, I didn't know what that was. I mean, we're coming out of the gate 100 miles an hour right now. I didn't know what that was, though. When you get into a certain wavelength, when you get into a certain level of like awareness, like that we talk about, right? Like you access like certain information. Like I start speaking when I get into like right now, like I get into this flow state, right? Like, and I can access information that I wouldn't necessarily talk about. I just think it's like you were talking about, getting in that moment, in that presence, and like feeling the energy, allowing the vibration to take you someplace, and just trusting that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know, but
yeah, for me, it's getting out of the way. I mean, I trip myself up. What do I want to say? What's important to share? But the truth is, if I'm just quiet and still on the inside, which actually takes the most amount of practice. So people think they want to be wise and skillful and insightful. I think that's available to all of us. I think all of our hearts have access to a universal wisdom. I think the hard part is being quiet, being still enough to not trip over your own stuff, so that when you're quiet and still, the right thing will come out. The heart speaks for itself. Most of my training is being quiet and being in a space where flow can happen, where I'm not tripping on myself.
well, how'd you get into this? Like, right, you're 43, I'm 38. We're not that too far off age-wise, but like, when did it start for you? Like, when did it happen when you had the awareness? You know what I mean? Like, did you grow up on the West Coast? Like,
Chicago area.
Chicago. Nice. Yeah. So when did when did it click for you?
Drugs in my teens.
That'll do it, man. What kind of drugs? Like LSD, psychedelics, what?
Sure. Yeah, those two. You know, I know this is public now, and I'm just going to be truthful. You know, I actually started smoking weed pretty young, and it slowed me down. And to a place where I started observing nature in a whole new way. You know, boys and we'll be boys. We go out in nature, we run around, and then especially if you're smoking weed, and I'm not supporting people smoking weed that young. It does a lot of damage to neurodevelopment and cognition and personality changes. So this is not me saying, have your kids smoke weed and they'll end up on public podcasts.
Disclaimer, do not smoke weed if you're a kid.
No, don't do it. But that is what I did. And then by 15, starting psychedelics, you know, it blows your mind as an adult. It's going to blow your mind. And so I saw into things beyond what was presented, what the parents were saying, society, teachers. I got to see other parts of the universe that we don't honestly get to access, certainly that young. And it showed me things that I couldn't explain or understand. And so that kind of started a trajectory of exploration about what is this stuff. And it's not like I would say, I probably did become a mystic that early, but I didn't know what that was, and certainly undeveloped. I was a rambunctious teen and things. So it's not like I became the Buddha, and certainly not now. But it did open the pathway as a young kind of adolescent. And then I found meditation at 18. So I did start that path pretty young.
Wow, we all have our own paths. We all have that journey. It's, you know, particular to each individual, and it like has to unfold. Just like, you know, one flower doesn't blossom the same as another. It's all different individual paths. Like I didn't start becoming, I would say, I mean, I'm not even exactly where I want to be, but it's like I've had this push towards spirituality, towards this transformation but everything in my life up to this point has led me to this, right? Like you're lucky
Yeah.
where, you started not researching, but through your experiences, you discovered meditation at an early age, where I discovered it at 35. You've had a long time to gain a lot of information. I have just learned how to sit, right, and try to be quiet. And because like the ego wants me to be perfect, it wants me to be, follow, I don't know, let's just Zen mind, beginner's mind. Like I just started reading that book, and I'm realizing there isn't a particular way of doing meditation. Like there's no, you got to do this to reach a certain development in your path. It's like it's all like it depends on the person. Like it depends on your. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so different schools do project kind of a pathway. Zen has a certain pathway, and depends if you're in the Soto or Rinzai school, and Theravadan traditions, Sri Lankan or Thai, or have different approaches. The truth is, though, we have to find the one that fits us right now in our life. And so I did Zen for about 8 years. It fit. It was what was right for me. I needed the discipline. I needed the extensive training in mindfulness, so that when I went to a different branch or a different school, I was able to do it more on my own. So when I lived in a cave by myself for a week, or when I lived in a forest with just one monk instead of a whole group of them, I had no container. But because I had a really strict Zen training, I knew how to take care of my practice in the forest. So I think different practices really work for different mindsets, personality, temperaments. You have to find yours and also be willing to shift when the time is right. But we have to discern, when is the time right? Because we might go, I don't like this teacher. I don't like this tradition. I'm out of here. This sucks. And you're actually missing the growth from being challenged. So you have to really learn when the thing itself is dissolved versus you're just uncomfortable and you don't want to keep going in practice because it sucks. So I'm hightailing it out. Those are different. Those are different responses. Honestly, I started playing music really young when I was in like 3rd grade. And then because of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, when I was about 12, I started guitar. And I've been playing guitar since I've been 12. And I get into flow states when I'm playing. And that is just as powerful as any deep meditation practice I've ever done, is getting in a flow state of music. So there's a lot of different ways in for us who are listening to get into flow states and those kind of ways of being.
Yeah, I agree. That's all. Bill and Ted. That's an excellent movie. Yeah, I mean, that definitely, one of Keanu's best movies. Besides Matrix.
John Wick number 1.
Yeah. I don't know. Bill and Ted's better.
All right.
I've picked up longboarding, right? Like to get into flow states. I'm a big fan of Steven Kotler. I know he does a lot of skiing. He's into that. I did some longboarding in college, to class, and then I stopped for a long time. And then for my 38th birthday, my wife got me a land yacht, and shout out to them. They're not a sponsor yet, but it's put you in flow states. It's like I do it I try to do it before an episode. I try to do it in moments that I know I'm going to be creative, or I need to draw from that creative power, because like the self drops away. You feel you just feel one with the energy and the universe, and you get in there and you start grinding out, and some beautiful stuff happens in those moments. But I'll tell you what, the one thing that I was thinking about with your journey. So you've been a Buddhist monk, right? Like you've done that discipline, right?
That was a short time in my life. Not of actually taking on the robes was not too long. I had already studied about 8 years in Zen and lived 1 year as a lay resident up in Portland, Oregon, Dharma Rain Zen Center. And I lived there as a resident lay, not taking on the robes. And then when I moved to Thailand, I was in the Peace Corps, and they allowed me to study and become a monk as part of my service, because it was such an important part of the Thai culture that they allowed me to do that. So I studied about a year to prep for it, and then went into the forest for some time, and then came out of that, and then stayed connected to that tradition.
What do you experience in those moments of like tranquility, of just being alone with yourself? Like, can you describe to me what that's like?
It depends, because it shifts as much as the mind and emotion shift. And that being said, it creates a container where all those emotions, mental states have space to be, which means there's nothing to hold on to. So normally, so I'll speak as a psychologist, normally a lot of us have mental and emotional states that come and we are clinging to them. We don't even like them, but we start ruminating on them. And because we're thinking about an emotion, it kind of recycles it, it reinforces it and stays longer. But when you're in deep practice, you have, you're really much more spacious. And being more spacious means an emotion can arise and emotion leaves. You're not stuck on any one thought, any one emotion, which means life is naturally just happening without you being pushed around by it. So in one way, it's really therapeutic because I'm no longer at the mercy of the waves of emotions or these thoughts that push me in one direction. And then you never feel alone. A sound of a cricket, the wind moving, the leaves in the wind become a source of companionship, a source of ease and well-being. The peace of nature starts filling in your own body. So there's a lot of different things that actually happen. You fall away, you really part of the whole scene of things. So your small individual life becomes part of the grand scene of the universe. And then you get bored, and then you have sexual fantasies, and then there's all kinds of things you have to work on. All your shadow stuff comes right up and faces you. You're like, I don't want to look at that. And they're like, well, you got nothing else to do. Look at me. Look at me.
Shadow. Oh man. I don't know. I think I respect that. I respect that you're able to do that. Like there is gonna be a point in my life where I want to be able to do that. Right now, it's really crazy and hectic. 3 kids, the mechanistic, world that we live in. I'm trying to break out of that. Like I'm trying to break out of that. And in this podcast and going back to school is my it's like that's my plan, is to break out of this mechanistic society and free myself. And but then again, it's just I don't want to cling to that, right? To that attachment either. It's like it's kind of weird because I'm a big fan of Ram Dass, and he talks a lot about attachments, and you don't really realize how much attachment you have until you start take something away. You know what I mean? Like, just take something away and see how attached I'm attached to this podcast. You know what I mean? Like there's so much attachment in this world. Like, I mean, even like you playing in the band, right? Like you take that away and what happens to Mike, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, do we really truly have a place in our lives where we can live without attachment? I mean, have you gotten to that point where you can honestly say that, and you probably have, where, nothing that I have can affect me if it's not here?
That point is a moment, and I might have had it, and then something else comes, and then I have to do it all over again. It's about, for me, developing a model, not having the experience. So I've had the experience of not being attached to anything. I've had that living in the forest. I have food, I have shelter, water, I'm good. Like things fall away, the need for more falls away. How long does that last when you're out of the forest? That lasted as long as it lasted, and that tapered off, just like all experiences taper off. And then I have a thing I love, and it's being pulled away from me, and I feel the gut-wrenching grief of like, I want that thing. That's mine. Why is it leaving? And it hurts. But I have a model now. Well, what did I do when I was in the forest? What did I do when I was practicing? And so I apply that model to my living life in real time right now. And then I realize, I'm attached. And of course you're attached. This is your wife. This is your business. This is what, your thing you're attached to, whatever it is. But the more you practice, the more easy access it is to those states of well-being where you're like, it's okay if it goes. It's really okay. I'm going to grieve, but I'm also okay with grieving. And then it happens less and less, meaning you grieve a little less every time. You're like, that sucks, but I'm okay. And eventually you have this mental state of, I'm okay. I do love that thing. And boy, that will hurt if it leaves, but I'm okay if it does go. So that's how you mentally and spiritually and psychologically train to take these really complex concepts like detachment and put them into action. It's not going to just happen once and you're done. It's over and over again, but it gets easier and easier.
That's beautiful, man. Oh man. How'd you get into psychology? Like we're going back to when you were a kid, you're, doing, some crazy things, but how did you get into psychology? Like what clicked for you on that?
first, my mom's a psychologist, although
Okay.
she does neuropsychology, which is more about assessment of cognition and brain behavior and how brain behavior impacts our behavior in real time. That's not what I do. Somewhere after my Peace Corps experience, I was serving kids and teaching yoga in Portland, and people were coming to me for like spiritual advice. So I would sit with them, and after a yoga class, we would do some Dharma work or insight work on shadow, but they kept bringing up things like suicide and severe PTSD. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that stuff. Like, no one's trained me. And I realized, oh, if people are going to come to me for things like this, I need training. There's no way I should sit here and give someone advice if they're suicidal or dealing with chronic PTSD. Like, how do I know? Yoga doesn't really, it gives you some maps for some mental habits. And so what I had to do is I was like, oh, if I'm being called to serve people this way, I better be trained. So that's when I decided to get my doctorate in clinical psychology so that I could serve people in a much more integrative way that combines spirituality, science, and psychology. That's why I decided, and I was 32 when I started. So it was later, people who aren't watching this, I'm air quoting, it was later in my life when I decided the doctoral program was where I needed to be.
Yeah, dude. Like I want to get mine. Like just, I mean, not even for that, like that check mark off the ego list. Like I want it just because I love learning. Like it's so crazy. If I had known early on in my career, in my life, in my career, that psychology was not what I thought it was, like it has spirituality in it. You know, there's a lot of cool shit in psychology. I mean, it's not just sitting there listening to people's problems all the time. I mean, you deal with a lot of, there's, you know, people talk consciousness, like that's a huge thing, you know, even though it can be, you know, very Newtonian, right? Like people empirical studies and causal and effect, you know, people want to see, they're materialistic. They want to see evidence, hardcore matter affects matter type of stuff and data. But there's also like parapsychology, transpersonal psychology. I'm a big transpersonal psychology fan, like Maslow. William James is like, you know, he's right up there with me. Like Maslow was awesome. Stan Groff, like big fan of Stan. He's still crushing it, like 90 years old, still like doing like talks about, you know, psychedelics, holotropic breath work. And I mean, are you doing anything with that, like psychedelics or anything?
I'm the integrative psychologist at the Boise Ketamine Clinic. So I do ketamine assisted psychotherapy. That means people come in and, excuse me, the clinic director, who's a nurse, administers ketamine at a certain dosage. And then I'm sitting there with the patient and we're going into both psychedelic spaces and therapeutic ones. So it interweaves exploration on a psychic level, spiritual level, with looking at trauma issues, core wounding issues from childhood. And it's an amazing way of integrating spirituality and psychology together. I find it super beneficial for most people, not everyone, but it's incredible to be able to go from a psychic space, you know, looking at realms of consciousness, personal, universal, all the way into like, then we go back into seeing your father in a very abusive situation, but you have this new perspective and this new courage. And you're also being guided into a place that's really scary with someone who's sitting there that you trust. It's a really interesting experience. I'm also joining the MAPS MDMA training team this October.
Oh, you son of a boo.
I know.
That's like my dream. That's awesome, Mike.
They invited me to do the training. And so I'm going to be trained by them and be able to eventually offer, you know, their MAPS training protocol. And the ketamine clinic here in Boise, where it's set up for that. So we're just waiting for my training and the FDA approval to do these things.
That is awesome, man. Yeah, they just got out of the third clinical trial.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're pushing like 60% of the patients that have struggled with PTSD. I think they're 60% are showing little or no symptoms anymore of PTSD. It's something crazy. I mean, I just saw it on Instagram. I mean, it's amazing what this therapy can do. Can you talk about that? Like you talk about interweaving the therapy, right? Like therapy and then higher levels of consciousness. Like how do you interweave that? Like do you talk to them throughout the process? Like what does that look like?
It depends on the person, but Each drug is different. So MDMA, ketamine, psilocybin, these are doing different things. They're the different neurochemistry. And so they're going to have different felt experiences. I actually don't know. I know psilocybin has some data with PTSD, but that's a place people can tend to get stuck in their hallucinations. And I've had just friends who have done this recreationally get stuck in really nasty situations that have happened in their lives and not really be able to pull out. That's more of the psilocybin experience. So with MDMA, let's say, you're having this drug that gives you an incredible sense of well-being, bliss, and ease. And then you bring up something completely frightening that normally the nervous system becomes dysregulated. It either starts freezing or it starts becoming hypermobilized, ready for fighting and running away. And so even a memory can do that, right? An image in your mind can trigger the nervous system to have a response that's detrimental to functioning well. Mm-hmm. So you take that away, and then you have this experience of bliss and well-being and ease and total oneness with all things. And then you introduce a traumatic memory. Your body's not freaking out. And you're like, oh, this is a memory. This is a thought. There is nothing real in this thought or memory. And so now you can start processing things that were really traumatic and the body is firing signs of danger, but there's no more signs of danger. In fact, there's signs of well-being and ease, which you're pairing now with these traumatic memories. So it really gives your body a sense of like, wait, I'm at ease. So this stuff is not as bad as I remember. And you're actually bringing up a sense of like well-being and belonging. Sure. And so when you're done, you have this like, oh man, when those thoughts come, my body doesn't have the same reaction anymore. There's meditation programs like iRest or Yoga Nidra programs that really do that same kind of work. You build your inner resource of safety, so you don't need the MDMA to do it. You're doing it on your own, but that takes, of course, much longer to train your body to believe that you're safe. Where you're on or you're on Molly or something, and you're like, dude, I'm super safe. I feel great. And this traumatic memory doesn't really do it anymore for me. It's fine. I'm all right. Yeah. I mean, not that simple, but that's kind of what happens on some of those treatments.
Yeah. Well, I was reading a book. I think it was, I can't remember what it was. It was about LSD and how LSD like would pick up from last time you left off and take you somewhere else. Like it would even like, if you use it like in therapy sessions, not just for recreational, it was like, I think Ram Dass talked about it as far as like psilocybin was like the astral plane, and then like LSD was like like a shotgunning you Lamborghini out into the universe, and like you would actually like be involved in like the collective unconscious, like suffering, like the collective suffering that there is that is out there, like that energy, whatever you want to call it. I mean, even like bliss, like there's pockets of energy out there that is from us. And they would experience that. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
We're experiencing it all the time.
Yeah.
Every single time another Black person is killed, and I'm pro-cop because I work with first responders, but I'm also Black Lives Matter supporter 100%. So every time another Black person is killed because of police brutality or violence, all of us have a collective experience of trauma happening. Doesn't matter if we're Republican or Democrat, if we're liberal or if we're socialist, we all hurt. We are all hurting. We are still hurting at the destruction of the Native American world and culture. We're still hurting from that. That's reverberating through the alcoholism in their culture. That impacts every one of us. And that being said, when we have moments of complete oneness throughout the world, when something terrible happens and it gets cleaned up and we all feel a sense of relief or well-being, that's always happening at all times. We don't need drugs to get there. Sometimes we use drugs to understand it or to have it revealed to us. But from my perspective, it's always ongoing. And those of us who are super tuned in and over empathic have to learn how to go, this is too much. So when I'm working out at the gym, I cannot see TV. I stopped watching TV back in 99. And in 2001, I stopped listening to news. I see all the suffering I need in my patients and in my community, I don't have to like watch the news to be up front, like what's going on. Well, humanity sucks and we're hurting each other and we're killing the planet. I get it. So I got to do something. I'm working on behalf of humanity and the planet. But if I'm watching the news at all, because I'm at like it's on the TV,
Sure.
Exercising, my body starts sending out a ton of cortisol and adrenaline. I go into some trauma response. I get angry and upset. I don't need that when I'm exercising. None of us actually need that. So it's always impacting us. It's all around. That's what the biofield is about. Biofield science is about what's happening around, in, and through us. So we just need to be more educated that we're always connected all time.
Yeah. Well, I needed to learn that, right? Like I never really understood that. I never understood the biofield or the 0 point, whatever you want to call it. I just recently read Lynn McTaggart's Power of Eight, right? Like, I mean, the ability to heal people from from afar, from distance, like you don't have to be, and just using that energy. You're 100% right. People need to be educated on this, right? Like that. I feel like I'm an empath. Like I can feel, like I never knew what it was. Like growing up, I remember going out in the woods and feeling something, right? But just, it could be a sunny day and it was nice out and I could just feel an energy and I never knew what it was until I started educating myself on these energy systems, like the collective consciousness, all the energy that is out there. I don't even know how, like, it's so like, I don't even know how to start with that for some people because they're so deeply rooted in their belief systems. Like they're, with, just religious dogma, right? Like, how do you, I guess when people come to you, they're already kind of aware of things, right? But if you're going out and you're speaking, which you do a lot of, and you start talking about these things, what is your angle? Like, how do you kind of like take them along and like just introduce new concepts to them? Or what does that look like when you're trying to teach and bring more awareness?
Yeah, it's a great question. And because I also want to promote justice in the world and restoration, and how do we get people who have closed belief systems to understand how we're all interdependent? And if we're not paying attention to everybody's well-being, our well-being is hurt at the same time. Like that's what interdependence means, that all of our well-being is dependent on everything. So your food quality is dependent on the soil, the nutrients, what the farmer's mindset is at, actually, how they're treated, the quality of the weather that day, as the seeds are getting fed by water, nutrients, the soil, the quality of the life of the worms. So like, we don't ever think about this too often. So how do we get people to realize, oh my God, my food itself is an interdependent experience of all of creation coming together? But people are like that too. So if people are hurting because of poverty or poor access to resources, it hurts all of us. So that's a really hard concept for people to learn. The way I do that is by bringing them to touch their own pain first. It's really hard to get someone to be compassionate, empathic about someone across the world. So what we want, or a different race or a different religion. And so what I do is have them touch their own pain, literally get in touch and start becoming tender and start realizing how untended their own pain is. And when I do that, they elicit compassion for themselves and empathy for themselves. And then I start introducing the pain of others slowly. I'm like, can you imagine this person suffering? And because they're already broken open, now there's a channel to have empathy and compassion for another. And this is how I do yoga and social justice work. Really starting inward and connecting and learning, wow, I'm still untended. I have a lot of wounds. Yeah, what's that like for you? What would it be like to not be tended to or to be dismissed because you're overweight or because you're poor? You might be white and like, but so like, what's it like though to be in those conditions and targeted? And then you're able to start empathizing with other people who are super different, transgender, gay, lesbian, whatever. Now you can start going, I never thought of it that way. I never really had love and compassion for those folks because they're so different than me. But no, they're not. You just buy into your cultural lenses. So
Sure.
I'm opening the love here, which then transfer love of other. And it actually makes a huge impact.
Yeah.
That's my way of doing it.
That's I never even thought about that. Like, yeah, I mean, because like I found the higher, like the higher consciousness level that you obtain, right? The more that you become more aware and more in meditation practices and spirituality, you start seeing the interconnectedness of everyone. So you start loving, as you love yourself, you start loving everyone else, because you see the connections, right? Like you start having this idea that if you can get out of your dogma that, through my meditations, I don't know about yourself, but I've had some really gnarly meditations where like it's either with Buddha or with Jesus. And, the entire message is like, I've spoken to Jesus and said, I love you, man. Like, I love you. And he's like, well, then you love yourself. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, well, if you love me, you love yourself, because we're one and the same. Like we are the same. Like, and he's like, well, you worshiped me your entire life, Trey. You worshiped me your entire life, but you never really loved me. You worshiped me because you thought that's what I wanted. It's not that at all. I wanted your love, unconditional love, like I unconditionally love you. And I never knew what unconditional love was. Like, I never knew what it was, until I started meditating and finding out it's loving yourself first, unconditionally, accepting everything that is there, the darkness and the light, and starting there, because that's hard enough. And then as you start doing that, then you start seeing the overflow. You start seeing your unconditional love go places that you never thought, in the community, wherever you live. And it starts spreading, and it's contagious. And it's, that's where I'm at, right? Like my meditation, I mean, I get some crazy, if you want to call it a download, I don't know, but I get some crazy information that is just so like heartwarming, that vibration that you're doing the right things, and that you need to keep going. Like no religion has ever given me that, like nothing. I mean, it's a great baseline, like great thing to start having a faith. But as I become more aware, and as I become more in tune into my awareness, into my consciousness, and I go deep down, and I know myself truly, that's when the magic happens. That's when I start learning. That's when I start trusting more and loving more. That's where it's at. I don't know if that's true for you.
How do you feel telling me that?
My heart's on fire right now, dude. Like, I don't know where that came from, but that came from me. That came from my being. That came from everything that's inside of me. And it's not easy to say, because I know people will listen to this and they're going to be like, what is he talking about? But my heart's trying to jump out of my chest right now, because it's like, that's the truth. That is my truth.
Yeah, you felt super grounded also saying that to me. Like,
Yeah.
you're not coming up with theories. You're speaking your direct truth to me. And you had a shift, a real deep shift, when you talked about unconditional love and moving that towards yourself. And that's the precious gift we get, actually. That's the only thing we actually need to talk about, is that shift to love. It's profound and it's radiant. It's felt. It's not conceptual. And then it radiates through you into other people. You can't help it. You have no choice at that, because it's through and beyond you, and you're picking it up, and it's also generated from you, inside you too. So most of my work, beyond all the big talking I do, is love. Love. That's it.
Just love. But I don't know if a lot of people know what that means. They hear it.
Yeah.
They buy Valentine's Day cards. They marry their first crush. Do you really know what love is? Like, what is love? Like, what is love? I think I'm still learning for myself, because I'm trying to learn. I'm learning to love myself. The ego is a bitch, thinking I thought that was me for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where are you at right now? Like, what I feel like I'm like a baby. Like, I am just learning baby steps into this, and I am loving every minute of it. I'm learning more, and I'm trusting myself more. I mean, people come up to you and say, you're so wise. You're so wise.
That's my response. That's actually my inner response. Like, oh God. Oh, they're going to want something. And I don't want to, like, dude, I'm just doing practices. I'm really well spoken, but I'm a dude with a dog. I want them to love themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's human love, and that comes with so many conditions, and it's so painful because we're like been taught as we're kids, I'll love you if you do it this way. My dad said, I will give you love if you don't disappoint me. Or if you achieve these things, I'll give you love. And so we try so hard to please our parents or caregivers so that we could get love, which is due, which is what we should be getting from birth on. And because of conditions and habits of mind, our parents struggle to do it the way we need it. And so we end up looking for love in all the wrong places and having all these mental and behavioral habits to get it. That's not the love we're talking about, though. We're talking about unconditional love that exists beyond any human condition or behavior. And because we exist, we have the right to unconditional love that's already present, and that you feel when you're in forests. You might get a glimpse of it with a lover. You might get glimpses of it. It's not the love that when we're angry with each other, it disappears. And now it's like, forget you. I don't care. I'm hurt. I'm angry. I pull back my love. That's human love. We mistake that for universal, unconditional love, which is always present and radiates in all directions. But we have to slow down, and we have to use it to tend to ourselves and our own wounds. And once we start doing that, when we really turn our attention inward and we start loving ourselves and going, I'm so sorry, this was so hard for us. I'm so sorry you struggled so much in that experience. That's love. That's non-conditioned. And then we start feeling that, and our cells start healing. Our psychology starts repairing itself. Our spirit has more space to play. It's hard to explain this over a podcast. What we want to do is have people experience it, and then they'll know, oh my God, I've been longing for that my whole life.
Have you been able to do that though? Like I've seen your website, and I know you have, this is your practice. Are you able to do that, with what you do on, especially on the website through your, meditations? Have you been able to help others love themselves unconditionally?
Yes, I will say yes. And I'll say for a time being, for moments in their life. And then they have to spend their life practicing and practicing, just like I do. It's interesting because I suffer like everyone suffers. And I'll be in despair for 2 or 3 days. My mind's a tormentor. Some people's are agitators. Some people's are instigators. Mine's a tormentor. I torment myself. And within a few days, sometimes an hour, maybe an hour. And I'm like, Mike, dude, oh, I'm so sorry. You're just in grief, man. Right there. That's the shift. Awareness. Wait, what's going on? Oh, I'm tormenting myself. Shit, Mikey, I'm so sorry.
But what are you tormenting yourself about though?
What does it matter? That's what my mind does. It can when people are like, I'm afraid that, and then I'm like, I don't even know what you need to tell me you're afraid of. You're a fear. There's fear. Someone might go, I'm anxious about da 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 da. I'm like, I don't even need to know what you're anxious about. Let's just tend to the anxiety. I'm tormenting myself about da da da. Mike, it doesn't matter. You don't need to torment yourself. Stop. Hold on. And now I become the father I wish I had when I was a teen and a young adult. I wanted to be comforted and tended to when I was freaking out. Now I do that for myself. It's a matter of becoming aware and then calming ourselves and then giving ourselves love that we desperately need. And that takes practice. That's what I teach people to do. So yes, over time, they can get unconditional love in a minute, in a second, but then they have to spend their lifetime practicing with it until it becomes second nature to go, oh shit, hold on. Trey, you're okay, man. You're just overwhelmed. It's okay. And right there, unconditional love floods you. And now you can move on and do some discernment, clarity work. What should I do now? So that's what I actually teach. It's a process of awareness, calming down, having compassion and love. And yes, everyone can have that.
I want that for everyone. Like no joke, like no bullshit. I want that for everyone. Because you imagine where we would be as a human race if everyone experienced that, but then had the practice to keep them in the game. You know what I mean? Because like I slip all the time, dude. Like I slip all the time. Like I'll wake up in the morning, have my routine, feeling good. Like, yeah, man, I'm pumping the energy out into the universe. And then by lunchtime, I'm like, shit. Like,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
yes, I do.
But where do you want to go, Mike? Like, I look at all the things that you're accomplishing. I mean, you're coming up and you're going to be speaking at the Never Alone Summit, right? Like,
that was the last year's. I think it's coming up tomorrow. I don't think I'm on this new one. I think I was on the last year's one.
Well, regardless, I mean, that's pretty awesome that you guys are into that, right? Like you're doing things for that. I mean, you're doing that. You've done that. You talked to me off air about a couple things you got lined up. Like, but what do you really, where do you want to go? Like, what do you want? I know you want to be of service, right?
Yeah.
Of Earth, of us as human species. Where do you want to go?
I want to spend a summer playing music with my bands. I want to really practice the self-care that I teach. I want to take some time and let Mike have some enjoyment and camp with his dog in the camper. I want to really practice slowing down and living the Zen life that I've been trained to do, so that when I'm full up and my cup is full, I want to return to serving humanity in the largest way that I can do it, that's safe for me, and teach people these skills of loving themselves so deeply, so tenderly, that they can't help but doing it for everybody.
What's holding you back from that?
Fear.
Fear. What? Why?
Yeah,
I mean, like
I've
just
traumas in my
fear.
life. I'm afraid of being in public. I'm afraid of getting criticized. I mean, like the normal human being stuff that fear's in my way. Me buying into fear. Honestly, that's just the truth. Like the Buddha taught a really hard lesson to not be moved by praise or blame. And to not be moved by praise or blame is so difficult, because we want praise and we really are afraid of blame because we go into shame mode or we go into defiant mode. So to truly be grounded in who you are. So I'm coming out of some hard years and I need to become strong like the Mandalorian. Like that's self-contained and grounded and grounded in who I am, so that I can move forward in the world and get some blame and go, I get it. You get it. Thank you for sharing. And not take it as like, oh, I'm a terrible person. I suck. That's where a lot of us go. That's where I go.
I'm right there with you.
And, so what do I want for myself is really to feel grounded in my steady, resolute heart, feel empowered in who I am, and know that I'm just enough. So that when I do serve in a much bigger capacity, I'm so grounded in that whatever comes, praise or blame, I just am so deeply grounded in my truth that I keep moving forward. And when I make mistakes, I clean them up without the shame that I suck. Yeah, I messed up. I'm sorry. What do I need to do differently? Let me move forward in the world. So that's what I'm working on. And then I can teach that.
Is that like, do you have that? And do you teach that now? Like what you're working on right now? Do you teach that?
When I've really come through an experience and I'm grounded in it, then it's like, now I know how to teach it, because it's natural. It's experiential. I get it. And my mind builds a model. Oh, here's what I did. This, and this, and this. When I'm in it, I don't teach it. It's not what I'll say is, gosh, I'm in that right now. I don't have a way out yet. I can't teach you that.
Man, do you ever feel like when you're teaching someone, like, do you ever get the imposter syndrome at all? Like, do you ever feel like, who am I to teach this?
Not anymore, because of that, because I promised myself, now it's about 15 years, I will not teach what I don't know through experience. So we can say I can say what my teacher said. I can say what the sacred books have said, or what psychological texts have said, or what empirical data through research have said. And I can say what I've experienced. But I was watching myself as a novice teacher probably 20 years ago, saying things that I didn't have experience in. And I watched myself, and that was like, Mike, you don't know what you're saying. don't say it. So I promised myself probably 15 years ago, 5 years or so into teaching, I will not say things I don't have experience in anymore, or I'll just attribute it to my teachers or some research. So no, I'm not an imposter. I'm a flawed person, but I'm not a fraud. I do what I say I'm doing. I practice what I say I'm practicing, and I teach what I can. And when I don't know, I say, I don't know. That's a mystery to me. It's so much is a mystery.
Yeah.
Everything's a mystery.
But life is so subjective though. Like, why do I need to have, like, it's cool to see the data, it's cool to have that. It's cool to have the sacred texts and combine the two and then create a story. But everyone's experience is so subjective. Like, why does it matter if you're up there teaching something and it resonates with somebody and it makes them feel good? You know what I mean? Like, that was so hard for me with the podcast, was like, am I getting the data right? Am I getting the mystical quotes right? Am I weaving them in and out to make a complete story, make it sound good? But it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, like, just trust yourself and just put it out there. And if it resonates with you, more or less, it's going to resonate with somebody else. I mean, I'm not going to put, false data out there, fake news. That's not what I'm about. I'm about making people more aware of what's out there and like what, I don't want to be the educator. Like, I didn't write these books, right?
Mm-hmm.
I read them and it resonated with me. And I'm hoping that my energy can catch fire on someone else and they can pick that book up and see what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all I want for them, right? Like, I don't need to be the teacher. I just want to be like the guy who makes the horse thirsty, so he takes his ass down to the river and he gets something to drink. You know what I mean?
I love that. And that feels so true. What you're saying is true for you. And for me, I don't want to teach things I don't have experience in, because it doesn't have the resonance of truth. That doesn't mean I can't teach things I don't know. I can just say, I don't know this, but here's what I've learned about it. I just don't want to pretend it's mine if it's not. I don't want to pretend it's mine if it's not.
You have a podcast too, right?
I have a radio show. Actually, I chose a real on-air radio show. Yeah, Radio Awakened. I wanted to have it on a certain day and time. I wanted to work with a community radio station that I love here in Boise, Idaho.
It's awesome, dude. Like, what is it, like interview? What is it? What type? Yeah, interview.
It's about exploring the furthest reaches of human potential. So I'm interviewing people who I am inspired by or who have done incredible things. Like, there's a show called Alone, which is you send real survivalist trained people into the Canadian Arctic, into the Alaskan Arctic, and they have to survive on their own, building shelters, hunting, skinning, trapping. And so I have a connection to some of these folks, and I get to interview them. I'm interviewing martial artists who are on the world stage, incredible musicians like Jeff Coffin of the Dave Matthew Band. He was in Bela Fleck for 14 years. Nice. Nathan Jennings. These folks who really live up to their full potential. I want to know what it's like to be them. How did they get there? What are their practices? So my show is really about interviewing those folks. So I'm not on the end, like you're interviewing me about me, but I'm excited about interviewing others about like their process,
Sure, man. It's all like, it's very interesting. Like, everyone's story. It's just everyone has an interesting story. It's just, who has inspired you though? Like, who has been the guy or the girl or the text or whomever that really has like changed the way that you look at this world?
Cassie Veaton. She was on your show. Cassandra Veaton.
She is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
You're lucky where you guys are best friends, but like, and you have access to her all the time. I had like an hour, 50 minutes of like just hanging out and talking to her. But she's amazing. I've learned so much just from listening to her speak, right? Like, she has a wealth of knowledge that is out of this world.
Totally.
I don't
literally
even like
out of this world.
Literally out of this world.
Come back and explain.
Like, dude, I can talk to you all night, brother. Like, we're right there on the same page, dude. How can people connect with you? How can they find you?
Well, this summer I'm going to be in a camper and playing music live with my bands. But I have a website, a beautiful website, a friend developed, michaelsapiro.com. I'm not really on the Instagram and Facebook much anymore. I'm really taking a break from that stuff just to serve. I'm getting really lucky. I'm going to be able to work with some ex-Navy SEALs, and there's a lot of cool projects coming up. But I am accessible. I drmichaelsapiro.com, drmichaelsapiro@gmail.com, michaelsapiro.com. I'm on YouTube. I'm working with another person, Dr. Julia Mossbridge, who studies time travel, love, unconditional love, AI. She is a far-reaching frontier world thought leader and scientist. She inspires me. Alyssa Epple, who does research on stress and telomeres and cellular health. She's out of UCSF. She has an amazing book. She inspires me. So I'm around these people a lot because they bring me up to like the place I want to be. But they also challenge me as a man, as a human being, to work on my stuff, to face myself. So I just want to say, as a human being, I'm doing the same work I'm asking everybody to do. I don't think I'm any more special than anybody else. People can find me on my website or on like YouTube and stuff like that, and on these podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, I would never ask anyone to do something that I'm not willing to do. And I mean, I get that vibe from you as well. Dude, this has been awesome. Last question though, man. I'm going to go deep here. What do you want your legacy to be?
I don't think about that. That's an interesting question for me. I want it to be right now that the people in my life feel safe with me, and that when I make mistakes, they can trust me to clean them up, and that they know I'm doing my best to be the best human being I can for my sake, my community, and the world. And that alone is enough for me. That can help me sleep well at night, knowing that I've done the best I can today. That's, I think, my answer.
It's beautiful, man. No, I love that, dude. Mike, this has been absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough for joining the show, bringing your energy, bringing your knowledge, bringing your experiences here, and being transparent and vulnerable. This is awesome, dude. Thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate it.
It's meant a lot being with you, and I felt safe being vulnerable with you. Just being real, I think, is the best model for what it looks like to be real. So thanks for having space for me to be real. Yeah.